For more on the West's strategy in fighting the militants and why it's excluding Syria and Iran, let's bring in Professor Syed Mohammed Marandi from the University of Tehran. Thank you very much for joining us here on RT International. So, America and its allies are deciding on the region's future right now in Paris, but Syria and Iran aren't there. Why?
Well, first of all, the Americans made a request twice for the Iranians to join, but the Iranians rejected it, and it's basically because this is a coalition of the guilty. These are basically those very same countries that almost 4 years ago, they began to destroy the sovereignty of Syria illegally, helping terrorist organizations, extremist groups in Syria through Saudi funding, Qatari funding, Turkish logistical support, and US and European coordination. These countries are responsible for the deaths of almost 200,000 people in Syria and for endless numbers of people who've died in Iraq over the last decade, over a decade. So the United States really is in no position to talk about the war on terror. They helped create ISIL through this extremism that has grown in Syria, that everyone that many people and everyone who knows a thing or two about the region has been saying for the last few years. The United States, unfortunately, right now is again disregarding the sovereignty of Syria as it has been over the past few years, and they're also disregarding the sovereignty of Iraq by helping Erbil without the coordination and consent of the Iraqi central government. So the United States is not being constructive, it's continuing to be destructive.
So it's your interpretation that it's America's foreign policy that has allowed ISIS, ISIL to flourish?
Without a doubt, the United States has for decades allowed Saudi Arabia to export extremist ideologies. As your report said earlier, the reason why we have this mess in Nigeria, in Somalia, in Libya, in Egypt, in Mali, and countries that weren't mentioned in the report is because the Saudis and other oil-rich dictatorships have been funding this extremist ideology, Wahhabism. Wahhabism wasn't a major ideology before. It's been oil money that has, it's because of oil money that it's become so mainstream in many parts of the world. And we've seen this happen in Afghanistan in the 1980s, where the Saudis funded extremist madrasas in Pakistan and along the border. That led to the rise of the Taliban. The United States wasn't against it back then because, for a host of reasons, because of the Soviet Union and also to put pressure on Iran. After 9/11, and when the Americans were hit by their own corrupt foreign policy, the Americans changed a bit, but again, over Libya, the United States and the Europeans began cooperating with Al-Qaeda, former Al-Qaeda members like Belhaj in Libya. And then they went on as representatives of the Libyan government and in Turkey coordinated with the FSA, the so-called Free Syrian Army. So Al-Qaeda-linked groups and people and extremists funded by Saudi Arabia and Qatar were working in coordination with the United States in Libya and later on in Syria. This is a repeat of what happened in Afghanistan, only much worse and much more extensive this time around. So the United States knows quite well who these extremists are. They know that the Saudis have been funding extremist clerics, and 24 hours a day they're on TV, satellite TV, they're broadcasting their religion of hate. Their schools and Saudi Arabia are preaching this religion of hate, and they're giving out millions of books every year free of charge to again spread this religion of hate.
Thank you very much for your time and your insight here on RT International. Professor Syed Mohammed Marandi from the University of Tehran.
Thank you for having me.